should be live. Gotta leak some stuff there. Hey guys, let me see. So no video capture device. We want my microphone. Audio microphone set to default. Headset microphone, yes. We're gonna have double audio here for a second. This is probably gonna sound better. Yeah. Hey guys. I've been a little congested lately, so if I sound weird, it's because I'm still just the slightest bit sick. I also need desktop audio up a little bit.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11
Let me
games,
see. I'm talking like... Okay.
The ultimate Fnaf timeline is fun. Today we
Okay, so... There we go. Let me push this out, because not a lot of people see my live streams very often anymore. So I gotta push this out really quick, and then we'll begin. It's exciting. I haven't streamed all week. I've been sick. Hello, one viewer. I'm guessing it's yep, CC. Hello. Let me push this out, cause stream sounds good. If the audio is too quiet, make sure to tell me. That way I can turn it up, cause I don't. All my settings are weird, cause I haven't really touched them in a while, and I don't have it set up for video reaction. But I feel very strongly about Five Nights at Freddy's. I've been around the community since it first launched. Sorry, I'm still sending out the video. There we go. Okay. Let me set up a chat. It's me. It's me. Uh. My kickstand's breaking on my phone. But, anyways. Gaming glasses on. I have been around the Fnaf community since I was very little. I'm also gonna turn... Sorry. I was not prepared for this. I'm also bringing some snacks. I'll grab some H2O. And we are ready. Okay, so I've been a part of the FNAF community for a very long time. In fact, it is recently turning 9, I believe, or 10. It's either 9 or 10, because I think it came out in 2013. Actually, let me look. I'm assuming Scott's gonna post something on the 10-year anniversary. How old is FNAF? Why is that question not a part of... 2014. Okay, so next year. Next year it'll turn... What was the release date? Why is none of this information out? It's none of this information out. Okay, plot release date. August. So next August it'll be 10 years. Wow, that is hard to believe. So it was made in 2014. Yeah, that's what. It's 8. No, it's 9. It's 9. It should be, unless August hasn't passed yet, which probably hasn't. Yeah, it hasn't. I'm being stupid. It's fine. Um, yeah, so about 8 years, 9 years soon. Um, we will be 9, 10 years into this little silly game. I actually have the first Silver Eyes books. I have not read them because they're too chunky. You can tell which ones I've read the original almost all the way through, and I read some of the second one, and then the third one has barely been touched. But yeah, I have read the first one though. So, and I do have the graphic novels. One of them is still in Arizona at the old studio, but is not here with me today. And I do have Security Breach somewhere around here, but I don't remember where I put it. But yeah, so I am a very livid fan of Fnaf. I've played almost every game except for VR because it was too scary for me. I'm not about to be looking dead face into a dead animatronic, but I'm excited to see this because I saw that this came out and I watched it and I want to give some of my opinions about it. You've read all of them. I've not read any of the new ones, the Fazbear Frights or the Pizzaplex. Though I will have to read them eventually to keep up with this mess of a timeline. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into the ultimate Five Nights at Freddy's timeline.
End the torment. 19 books, 11 games. Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games,
Damn.
8 whole years.
Okay, yeah, he
leading to
did
this
say
moment.
8.
The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together.
Hey, he did the thing. He said the thing.
Help!
Fuck.
Hello, Internet. Welcome
To Game Theory.
The show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life.
Yeah, isn't there like 60 of these
This one
now?
is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kind of nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018.
I actually did watch the original timeline video. I have been keeping up with their theories. Most of them are good. There are a few of them that we'll get into eventually, but
Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter.
Fazgoo.
Since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track.
There is a release date for the FNAF movie. It's coming out next October. This October in 2023.
For this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today.
There's so many dead rabbits.
At this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theory. So to hopefully make it a little easier for everyone and to give us all a baseline to talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I...
Notice how he says current, because this thing can change faster than a tire goes out. Like,
I just want to explain
I'm telling you.
First, this timeline is massive.
I remember when
Seriously,
the phone guy was
this
William
thing
Afton.
towers over any video project we have ever done on the
Yeah.
channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the
Successful, I mean, I guess.
world.
If they're selling out robots.
The monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks.
I mean, if killing kids all the time is successful, then yeah, I'd say they did succeed at killing kids.
Basically modern FNAF. Everything that happens after the pizzeria simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations.
That should have been the end of it, the pizza simulator.
As well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one...
Okay, there is a 4th episode.
seamless continuous
just
video,
want
or
to
just feel
clarify that because
incomplete without some
he
sort of
yeah,
explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm gonna merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanation.
that video
So
hasn't
for
come
now,
out yet.
this just felt like the best,
But
most
also
satisfying, most
I did want to do these because he explains everything. I always come back from CC. He does explain everything in these videos, so I wanted to go over it and see if I agree with any of this.
complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles.
Fun fact, his first FNAF episode wasn't even explaining the lore. It was more like a Chuck E. Cheese video.
And any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those.
I actually got to get my FNAF books out.
Back, grab some popcorn or your
just in case I gotta use them.
When I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back to a few times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life.
Give lives. I do love the editing. The editing is great.
Or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression, and people were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, fourth highest unemployment in the nation, and full of trans.
Wasn't Utah a part? Wasn't Utah like a part of the dust tornadoes of the Depression?
To find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits.
Yeah, there's probably only like Hoovervilles around.
Called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over
I bought that game.
featuring an animated bear drawn into popular pie-eyed cartoon style for characters at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop.
Yeah, pal.
He said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family, and the price
was great.
Honestly couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum.
I actually didn't know that there were real-life dancing bears. I learned this just
Bailey.
recently.
Tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show.
In the
From
30s?
the Vaughn brothers or the Robbins brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy.
This is the one part that I don't agree about this. Billy in the 1930s, if he was born like 1928 or 1929, yeah, he would have been born in 1928. By the time that he gets bit in 93, he would be like 80, 90 years old, right? Because 34, so let's assume he's 3 right here. In the 1930s, he doesn't give us a date, because I'm sure it's probably impossible to find a date unless they explicitly tell us. If he's born around the 30s, be 10 by the time it's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. He'd be ancient by then. He wouldn't be going around murdering people because they'd just be able to kick out his leg or something.
That was his nickname at least. His parents liked to call him William. William Afton.
William Afton.
He could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be...
Which also, I don't understand. You look like Purple Guy. I always come back. It's because the outside is there's a pink tree right on top of. I'm gonna have to fix this because I'm gonna switch my camera around. But there's a I don't know how well you can see it up, but there's a pink tree right there. Or purple. Right there. And that's what's illuminating. The light is hitting me.
Be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend.
So these are also from
vest and matching tie,
Security Breach.
Bonnie the Button.
I do agree
Fredbear
with
was
these.
certainly his first love. Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do
Diner was probably in the 60s or 70s.
with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing.
Ad.
Other people saw the success of his idea, and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first,
Yep.
but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do. Make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots. Simple metal
Give
skeletons
gifts,
that
give
were powered
life.
by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own. No
So this
human
is
could. It was like magic,
Emily,
magic
right?
that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry
Yeah,
Emily.
Henry
This
Henry
in
Emily.
some small way had been able to harness the power of
William. People. I promise Fredbear and Bonnie doesn't bite. Yes.
life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fredbear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous
Whoops,
admiration
that's gonna
caused
leave a mark.
A bitterness that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the
someone's
robots.
jelly.
Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult, another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget.
I don't think there's a
1979.
picture in this
Despite
book
being
of
bitter,
Henry.
Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original performing animal mascot.
OG.
Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to
Ooh. This is a fun Easter egg from Happiest Day. I don't know if he originally intended this to be canon, but there are very familiar faces in there. Those look almost identical to the what are their names? Pig Patch.
magnets.
Whatever.
Crappy Mr. Hippo
I am so sorry,
That said,
Gregory.
not all the characters were winners. The
I'm
reception to
sorry,
some characters was
Gregory.
just mediocre. So they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out.
This
of
was
commission.
really weird
Others,
too
though,
when I
would
was
fare
playing
much
Security
better, like a
Breach.
new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In
Freddy
1983,
Fazbear's
Freddy
Pizza.
Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken,
Did he say
Bonnie, the Blue
1983?
Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course, sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983,
83,
Freddy
okay. Remember that. 1983 is the year that this opened, according to Help Wanted.
Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but
Well,
other than that, things
I think the reason why they just... I'm sure Bonnie the Bunny would have been there. They just didn't want to show it in the FNAF 4 house. Like, I'm sure it was passed up because Spring Bonnie is not a... Unless you got a dead dude in it, it isn't a very appealing, like, and also a blue bunny looks better than a gold bunny. But, they probably would have added him. It's just, since in FNAF 4, this is William's house, they don't want to have anything tied to William in it. If you want to prove that this is William's house, that would be a keystone, but he wanted to leave it ambiguous. Fun fact, the first game... Yeah, he had nightmares of Bonnie, and that's probably what spiraled into Springtrap. But yeah,
things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter. He had a thriving business. And best of all, he was able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were
Henry
constantly pushing the
Emily.
limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage?
here, hold on.
But why stop there? Afton had big ideas.
Animatronic suits, Profit, Exotic Butters, book series? And I don't know what that says. I'm sure that's probably something to do with, like, something MatPat's doing. But
What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity
this would be
and
the
flexibility
spawn
while
of
still
Sister
providing
Location. But
structure?
I'm still
The
waiting for
possibilities
something.
this technology were endless. Afton fell in love
He spoke
with
of 83.
robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots, he had stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control.
By the way, at this point in the timeline, the 80s, Afton would be like 50 years old now. So just keep that in mind.
Life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was practically speedrunning his way.
And
through
I'm
the game.
assuming Henry's
And while
around the
William
same
wouldn't admit
age.
it out loud, one other thing that kept
So
pushing him forward was the
either
desire to
younger
beat
or the
his
same.
former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1 of the story. That said, at the end of each of these chunks,
Okay.
I want to break down some of the logical leaps that I made, since the more narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to jump justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without him just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins. That just doesn't make a lot of logical sense because he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was either a family business that Afton then carried on to a new generation, or something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up.
Probably not a kid, because he'd still be old.
Core elements of the story, that Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids. He wanted to bring things to life from the very beginning, a theme that recurs a lot for him throughout the rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the seams and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also
that does make sense.
Very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's the way that he sees himself. There's also a whole separate discussion to be had here about the habits and rituals of serial killers. So the fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them.
Well, because every time he kills someone, he's in the Bonnie suit.
Attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams, giving him a personal connection. And that's not all. In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers. The Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fredbear, was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel.
Which is why he no longer has an endoskeleton, because he was in suit mode before becoming possessed.
And that whoever is having the Fnaf 4 nightmares, if they even are nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies. For a while now, I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fredbear. And yet, there are 2 key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very
mediocre melodies, that's what they're called.
Battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And 2, we know that at minimum, Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if after...
And also there's a Mr. Hippo magnet in the Pizzaplex, which would mean that both companies would be together at the point of the Pizzaplex. He's missing that note, but I understand when he's getting there.
Created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival
there's probably other merch.
Who would likely be ripping him off? Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant.
Or he probably just built a second restaurant.
Rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote from
New and existing customers can choose the phone they want.
Don't you guys just love ads on YouTube?
On us.
Not to brag, but I'm on Verizon now. And I got to choose the phone I wanted for free.
Not that you're bragging.
Choose the phone you want on us. Verizon.
one of the pages. Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters.
Once again, tying it back to Chuck E. Cheese.
Brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here. But why would I call out the rival restaurant as being named Chica's Party World? A few things, actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location, so
yeah.
It is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story of the Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book version.
It does fit in somewhere. Chica's Party World was the original place where Henry Emily built the mediocre melodies. You've clearly stated that.
Versions of Pig Patch
Though,
and Ned Bear,
I'm sure that's where you're going.
As a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with the theme of down home country
I do agree with that.
Playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away.
And
That's
also
why when
she's
Freddy's
betterly
killing Seth and Williams'
designed.
killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It
Yeah.
might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica.
So you gotta wonder if Afton is dead at this point, and William's dead at this point. Who has the right to these characters now? Because all of William's kids are dead. Because Crying Child got bit, dead. Elizabeth got scooped, dead. Mike Afton, I believe that is the older brother. He got scooped, then was an animatronic for a while, then became a dead person, and then walked around as a dead person for a while, and then died in a fire. So all of William's kids, there is a wife, though, and that does tie into his theory. That's the only person that would have the rights to this, because we have no mention of any of Henry's. He never had another kid. He had another son, but we learn in the books that the other son is just, or we learn that. Why am I pulling that one up? We learn in the books that the other son, Michael, it's Michael, not, yeah. So we learn in the books that his other son was actually just his daughter as a younger child, and that she's a robot. That's, yeah, a beginning of a very confusing timeline. But, so, unless Elizabeth is still out there, which she would be the puppet at this point in the games, she'd be the puppet. It's already been clearly stated that she's the puppet, but the puppet should be gone, or at least somewhere. She's dead, but does haunt the Pizzaplex. So who is running it? And I feel like, because he's stating that it's the mother, and that would be the only decent thing, except for the fact that she's like, would be in her 90s by the time 2025 comes around, or 2024, whenever the Pizzaplex is built. Because this would be after Fnaf 3, this would be after Pizza Simulator, this would be right after. A mall typically takes like 2 years to be built, and if maybe she's 10 years younger than William, we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. If he's 50 or 60 in 98, or the 80s, then 60 in the 90s, 70 in the 2000s, 2010 he'd be 80, and 2020 he would be in his 90s. So she'd be way too old She'd be in her 80s or 90s by the time the Pizzaplex would even be brought up. So she'd be written out of the equation. So who has the rights to Freddy Fazbear's?
That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all
Unless
this
she's been
maybe
given gifts,
is
given life to
connecting a lot of
herself.
dots that are very
Like,
spread out across the franchise?
and I don't know if he understands that he's
Absolutely,
probably
but I think
kicking
it
himself
makes
down
sense.
with
It
that,
also serves as a clean answer
tying
to
it
a
back
lot
to
of
the
random threads
30s.
that Scott's been leaving dangling for years.
Because
So
she'd
with
be
all of that
really
in mind, my
old by
friends,
the
we can
time the
close
Pizzaplex
book
would come
on
out.
Foundation of Freddy's. And don't worry, next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation. Part 2, the Afton era. I promise, it will actually be next week.
Okay, that's what he's
No
going
more
with
waiting
next.
around. I am just as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise. You know what else I promise? I promise that we'll actually get to talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the games anyway. Even back in the early days of Fnaf, we were decoding images and source code that Scott found
Yep.
through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things.
I have not read any of these.
All of it is crucial to understanding this franchise and its lore. Unless, of course, Steel Wool finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
I would love to get kind of back to. I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind of like the origin of like that of Freddy Fazbear.
But in the meantime, while we wait for that inevitably cryptic game, I hope that this start to the timeline helps.
Do it. We need to figure out what happened.
If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell, make sure you do it now.
It's okay, Matthew. We already have. To mute the audio because it's copyrighted. I've heard that this is a really good movie. Also, Nicolas Cage is like in his 60s now, 70s. He looks really nice for 67. I need this in my life. Literal stuffed crust. Like doubly stuffed crust. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory.
Officially page 7 of the Fnaf timeline.
Consider this my
Last
audition
episode,
for
the
Game
origins
Theory.
of Freddy's. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life, and the infuriating moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion
Give
that would
gifts,
mutate,
give life.
twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death.
Death.
Something that Afton would become
You gotta love the
intimately
ads,
with.
yeah.
Before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our newest...
Speaking of ads.
Guys, this is a huge...
Love style theory and all, but we don't need all those. That was actually one of the first 100,000 to subscribe to Style Theory.
The world that
I have the screenshot and everything. I'll pull it up.
can be even better than looking cool. So go ahead, enjoy your all-day theory marathon.
I'll have to
Now
put it in my
for
notes to
Google,
remember
it's
it,
time to
but
complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry.
Chapter 2, the Afton era.
Business was booming with two whole restaurant franchises running, Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and...
Okay, so what I'm wondering is what happened to Henry's establishment. Did it turn into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? What happened there? We never get a clear answer. When did this release? Because I subscribed the same day, February 18th. Sorry, I'm looking for the picture. There it is. I was actually the first. I was one of the first 17,000 to subscribe to Style Theory. But yeah. So did Henry's restaurant turn into Freddy Fazbear's, or is Henry's restaurant just no longer in existence, or is it still running? That's what I'm wondering.
They called their new invention the Springlock suit, and fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael.
Bad
There's just
idea.
one problem with that, Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump scaring him with a Foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take
I think
his
we all
scared
know how
little
this
brother
turns
and
out.
do the one thing that he was terrified of
This is
doing,
still
and
1983, by the way.
animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's
Head
movements.
crushed.
Immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp. But it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son.
You are broken. I will put you back together.
This would not be the end, no matter what.
We actually know that he only survives. Crying Child is in the hospital for 5 days. On the 5th, it's either 5 or 6. On the 5th or 6th day, he dies, and then someone else is dreaming.
William's son would live again.
Because he's dead. We hear the flat line.
Right now, he just didn't have.
So either it's just extra stuff, or he's just
In
dead.
the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting
Or he's
outside
fighting
without parental
death.
permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's springlock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit.
It's me. It's me.
His three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words "It's me" ringing
Oh.
through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break
I
out of
called
his
it.
room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there.
Oh my lord. I didn't care for the first one. Jesus.
As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part that failed after.
Henry had nothing to do with it. I would say that you probably shouldn't be sticking a human being in a robot's mouth if you don't want your son to be dead. Your other son is probably more. Also, what happened when your other son killed your son? Were there charges? Was your son put into jail? Like, what happened there?
William ordered one more drink. One too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building.
Ooh.
Bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. A beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's
Darkiplier question mark?
suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. It felt good.
Damn.
It felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
Matthew Patrick should have been William Afton. Or at least Michael Afton. He is crazy.
And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's Family Diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location. And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic
Sorry, I thought I
memories of their
heard
yellow
Minecraft
predecessors
playing.
quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering, even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics.
Afton
for
Robotics.
those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the
Yeah,
pizzeria.
I'd say
First
building
of these
murder
experimental projects was a secret
animatronics is
workshop
a
under his
little
house.
experimental
Veritable
for
world, which allowed him to
rip-off
work
Chuck E.
while still
Cheese.
monitoring his kids via hidden security
Yeah.
cameras. 1983.
83.
A passcode that served as a
I played
constant
this game
reminder of why
too.
the cameras were so important. Why he
I played it
was
back
down
in
there the first
2016 when it came
place.
out.
This was all to fulfill
Or
the promise that he had
2015,
made to his son,
whenever
right?
this one
I
came
will
out.
put you back together. This was for him. All for him. Right? But cameras
Right?
weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of
Game
his kids wind
over.
up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform
illusion
blank,
discs.
smooth plastic robots into lumber.
They actually show up in this one. Where is it? There we go. Right there. Sound illusion disc. Right there. Glad I bought the novels.
Lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with.
Though in the games they're circular for some reason.
Rotting, putrid, terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares. Illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget.
Sound illusion discs.
Years
Yep.
later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside
sees an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't
The
mine.
baby isn't mine.
Keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had
The
gotten a taste
baby
of what it felt
isn't
like to be
mine.
unleashed. What it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something.
It's interesting that he chose to use
June
fire for
26th,
him.
1985, putting on
The
gold bodies
missing
of
children's
children
incident.
one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was...
These are all supported by the free game that is still on Steam today, Fnaf Pizzeria Simulator.
First.
In the minigames. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found, and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed. Stuffed inside the suits. No one retained those things anyway except for him. And so...
There's one question though. Where did the bodies go after they were stuffed in? Because there's... Foxy is ripped open. You would think we'd be able to see a dead child in a ripped open Foxy. I don't know.
Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and Gabriel would come next, but it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They were just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after.
This is also Pizzeria Simulator.
Over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him to the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for visiting, and we hope you enjoyed the
Oh
show.
my god,
Freddie
it's...
and the gang are pretty tired, but they'll be back again next week.
It's the video game. Why did the trailers look better than the actual game? Can someone explain that to me?
Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex is now closed.
That one he should have killed. With no more active animatronics
He shouldn't have
left, he
killed?
shoved the body into the one suit that remained
The
backstage.
one you should
the
not have
long-forgotten
killed.
Yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police...
One part that always stood out to me is, why would you hang these in your own restaurant? Like, I know people aren't allowed back there, but there are obviously post-its of child drawings, so it's like, hey kids, there were 5 people missing here, but don't worry, that won't happen to you.
Would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was...
Why is he in the girls' bathroom?
Best. And so he walked away a free man. But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics. Toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys...
Also, how is he able to make animatronics of Freddy and the gang? I know he owns the rights to Chica, but does he own the rights to both Bonnie and Freddy?
These were special. They were a new breed of
I don't know.
robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database, so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the
Though
new
I'm
improved
assuming
Freddy
Afton
Fazbear's
probably just
Pizza
wanted to
was
kill
making
some kids and
headlines in
didn't
local
care.
newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back. Without him, that was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture. No, as long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard.
Also, how are you about to let William Afton come back as a security guard? Like, he would obviously be the one interviewing him, right? Like, they wouldn't have a manager interview a night guard. They would have maybe a manager and the owner. You'd have to have the owner's approval. I know from small businesses, because I've been a part of small businesses, that yes, you would have the manager like interview you, but you'd have to have the approval of at least one owner before just like I don't know.
There it was.
Especially since he knows that William likes killing kids in furry costumes. Like little Freddy over there is probably his next costume that he's gonna wear while like killing these kids. You know what I mean? Like, why would you not be interviewing people when you know that there's a killer tied to the restaurant? But anyways, besides that, maybe you got a facelift.
With the old withered animatronics was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right.
This is Fnaf 2 Night 6 or 5.
Concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. Our position just became
Fnaf 2 Night 6 or... Yeah, it would be Night 6.
He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure...
How do you get these kids here, by the way? Were there no parents around when these kids died?
That this would get it to close. Good, if he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still.
Hey.
It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was
Phone guy got bit?
stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations, Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as 2 special ones. The first,
also, he legally wouldn't be able to use it without
now she would again. The second, the titular baby, was
Emily's permission.
In mind. Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one
until she
that
wasn't.
Obeyed, until the day that she didn't.
Daddy,
oh.
why won't you let me play with her?
Didn't you make her for me?
Didn't you make her just for me?
Oh my god. The ads are unbearable. I have to mute the audio because I don't want to get a copyright strike from a stupid advertisement.
Nicolas Cage is wickedly hilarious.
The day before Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started. 1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but Williams' damage to the brand had been...
Once again, how is Henry Emily able to open without Afton's permission? Because Afton holds the rights to... Unless he owns Fazbear Entertainment, which then... Yeah, because he bought out Fazbear Entertainment, but then that would also mean how is William able to use the FNAF animatronics? Freddy, Foxy, Chica, or Bonnie. Because though they're really different, they're the same thing. It's just differently built. They're the same people. How? Though it never opened.
They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had,
I don't know.
could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But he had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of
From
goo.
FNAF 6, can he get it?
To his own creations. He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly, the coils came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it! He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else. Something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time,
that is probably why.
The ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy.
So theoretically, you'd be able to create life by just throwing a dead person onto, I don't know, a vending machine, melting them down and putting them in a robotic suit. Or just building a new human entirely based off of build somebody exactly correctly, like all their skin and everything, all the joints fully movable, and then pop their dead body in there, or their remains in there. And then boom, they're back to life.
Up and blocked the door.
The lore to this series is very confusing.
Of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe
that is a good question. I would probably shoot myself.
He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge.
He is dead.
Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was
the leaky ceiling.
Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this.
Though these tapes would be created while the pizzeria is open. Also, Phone Guy would be dead at this point. Or is this taking place before FNAF 2? Because FNAF 2 is clearly right before he switches to the pizzeria in 1. But then that would also mean that the pizzeria in 1 would have to be the next one in the timeline, which it does seem that it was reopened, but then when it was closed again, why would you have to tell in other establishments that all safe rooms are being closed when all of the restaurants shouldn't even be open to begin with? There would only be security guards there to make sure nothing was damaged. That'd be very weird.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die. End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and re-established time and time again by the games. That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of Sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one
I would agree.
left behind by a dead sister. And
I still hold by this one.
He's scared, and more specifically why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics.
Because there'd be no reason. Maybe if it was Michael that was doing the dreaming, then it would make sense because he saw both his brother and his sister die by Freddy, which would... That's actually really good. It would be Michael dreaming. Because he saw both his brother die by the robot, and his sister, assumingly he would know that his sister was scooped and put into the Ballora, so he would know that they would tear in half and consume kids. So he would have two experiences where the bite victim, he would know that he could get killed by the frontal lobe decapitation or their stomachs, though they never use their stomachs in the nightmares.
Last time one of his kids got too close to
that is a smart theory. A game theory.
To scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location.
Which I don't...
provides 2 months of heat protection in a single application.
Basically, Elizabeth.
Which I also don't understand, because at this point, William and Henry wouldn't be talking, so how would he get his hands on Funtime Foxy?
Dying first has everything it
Oh
needs
no.
to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work, hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the Fnaf 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring-locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he re-emerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap. Ooh, when you put it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts.
It will.
Ugh, we'll see. Anyway, until then, my Faz heads, congratulations! You've made it through a massive upload. And hey, if you are still looking for more to watch, then check out the other 5...
No. We're here for FNAF today. We can't be talking about anything else. Monster Energy. Zero sugar. I'm gonna get a copyright strike for this music. Yeah. Copyright strike. Who? Copyright strike. Yeah.
Fit a master's degree in education into your
We
schedule.
love copyright strikes here.
You got to you.
Here at rylee Studios, we get copyright strikes all the time. To the game theory.
And page 20 of our final FNAF. This is so ridiculous. Last time we covered William Afton's rise as a serial killer. How the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drinks. One night in a fit of rage, he lashes out against Henry's young
on
daughter,
God.
Charlie. His first murder. This moment becomes the first.
I do agree with most of the points he's bringing up. I just wanna... I don't know.
And the lives of those around him. That one murder gives
There are a few things that I would change myself personally.
across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to remnants
I would like to
and
see the
potential
fanatic.
for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices. Robots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation and collection of more remnant. Except there was one thing that he didn't account for: his daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children to put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for, though, were the ghosts, forcing him to pick.
So I'm assuming that he destroyed all of the animatronics, because after this point, because if we go back a few frames, there are 5 dead kids there. So that would mean that he's destroyed all of the animatronics. Maybe he came back for the golden suit. That's what I'm assuming, because there's no other animatronics there except for the gold suit. There's him, the gold suit, and the 5 dead souls. That's all I see here. So that's what I'm assuming he did. So we already figured out Remnant.
Leading to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video. Today we're finishing up chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton era. Over the next
The
6 pages,
Afton
we switch our
era.
focus to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the fallout of a stupid childhood decision with tragic consequences. A young man whose life is best described as collateral damage.
Also, how did he go from this fat chubby kid to a like tall,
we won't be finishing the timeline.
lengthy guy?
I know. I'm sorry I wanted to, but covering script. Don't worry that.
Shit.
Men's Warehouse.
Ah.
Build your day, your style.
Fucked up and accidentally hit the wrong button.
Caught in the blast radius of William's whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just... Fair warning, though, the conclusions we've reached that solve security breach, whew, they are controversial. I feel good about them, like discussion. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike.
The Afton era
Still
continued.
wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of two suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the two of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time, though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence.
So is Michael just living off of his father? I'm assuming yes, because I'm sure he's probably got, like... got... I'm sure he's probably got... Ooh. Stream's glitching out a little bit. Son of a bitch.
A phone call, a post-it, something.
Unless that's my phone. Hold on. What is going on here? Why is my CPU running so high? What is making it run that high?
It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of two suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the two of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time, though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence.
Okay,
Something had happened.
that should seem to fix it.
Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William had prepared him in the event that something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look.
Don't have the book. Can't check.
Mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. Never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Father, it's
me, Michael. I found it. I found it.
It was right where you
As
said
it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant.
It was right where you said it would be.
elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible.
Bitty Bab?
Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground
Bubba?
science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet,
It really doesn't, because you see, this is like the town. This is the town area. This is I'm assuming that's the original Fnaf, right? That would be the original Fnaf. This is the town, and this is the Fnaf 4 house. So all of this was built underneath the town in Utah, and no one noticed it. How? You know, when houses start falling into the ground, I'm assuming you would notice something's going on, because there is no way in hell he would ever be able to get a permit for this. No, though it doesn't go underneath anything as far as we can tell from the map, because I know this map's from the official games. But this is the entirety of Sister Location. It makes no sense whatsoever that he would be able to build this. Though, so like, this would have to come before the entire town. Otherwise, the entire town would have had to have been ripped up. But I don't know.
Was mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, a prideful, sad, angry man with petty, everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with a stranger this entire time. His father had secrets. Suddenly, the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here, though? Was this Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to the gas leaks. After that day, father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his work. Clearly, the entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby. His father's pride and joy. Except something was different.
Golfers. Do you love it?
I love it.
Go for the handful.
About her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt
It's your sister.
There's something bad inside of me. I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Will you help me?
Was this his sister? William's baby girl? But how? Why? What was this?
Like father, like son, he put her back together.
Outlining the features of these animatronics, storage containers, voice mimicking, parental tracking. And was that a child in Freddy's stomach? Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow been the prime suspect in all of it? Suddenly, Michael's mind flashed back to his persistent nightmares throughout his childhood. Had he been experimented on too? Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster, toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring, expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was working down here trying to make believable humans, literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new contact.
Let's look at this for a second. Do you see this? This is an official render, right? Do you see that? Do you see how the eyes are purple? Do you see this? Purple, blue, bluish purple. Unless Elizabeth's eyes went from bluish purple to pure green from the ages of 3 to 5 because she was killed very young, there is no way in hell that this could have been a younger version of Emily. I see where he's going with this. Like he was trying to make like this isn't supposed to be her mom. This is basically just him like building something. But she already has a body. Why would she want to go back to being this young little girl? She already has a body. I don't understand it. Anyways, but this could have been before he learned that she was alive through a baby. So, maybe.
Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't...
Though it has been noted that he looks very similar to his father. So it could just be the animatronics seeing William and being like, hello in there, is this the same person? Like, is this still William Afton, or is this Michael? Like, they can't recognize it because they're just animatronics. They can't tell. Like, you can see every time there's been a night guard, everyone's thinking, oh, that's William Afton, or that's Michael. It's an Afton, but not all the time it's an Afton. Well, it is, but in their eyes, they wouldn't know that that's William. They see someone that looks like William, and they kill him because it looks like William Afton, so they think it's William Afton, but it actually isn't. So that's probably not an early version of his sister, though it could be, since there are but there are multiple versions. So I don't know why you would build, and they're all the exact same thing.
Recognize me at first, but then
But I do get what you're talking about.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was his sister, heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
Actually, now that I'm looking at it, it could be the crying child. If anything, it could be the crying child that is being replaced with the Bitty Babs.
Please put us back inside.
Maybe.
There's nowhere
I don't think so, but
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now auditorium. He would lead them. He would protect them. And finally, he would be able to forgive himself for the killing of his brother so many years.
Wait, hold on.
So many years.
I like how his eyes are just blue, and then suddenly dead. Sorry, just want to point that out. You're in the scooping room now. The scooper only hurts for a moment.
Scooper? That violent extraction arm? Michael had seen that one in the pile of blueprints. Something about heat rendering the magical silver metal inside useless. In reality, prior to getting himself spring-locked and put behind the wall, William's methods had become increasingly sophisticated, with a mechanized arm that could infuse...
Which I would believe, because this is a natural progression. He goes from murdering kids by hand to murdering kids with robots.
As Michael was about to learn.
But if we looked like you,
Outsourcing it.
then we could hide. If we looked like you, then we would have somewhere to go.
Michael was going to be the hero to help these animatronics, all right. He was going to help the haunted tubes and wires of these animatronics escape, just not in the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him. Another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body. As he heard his bones ripping through his flesh, Michael blacked out.
But something is wrong with me. I should be dead.
But I'm not. Also, I'm turning off these subtitles because they're not correct.
Michael's life was not his own.
Hello, Thumbs Up Gaming.
With a tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst as day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag.
Once again, this is supported by the games, though I don't know why they would be waving at him since he's underground.
Mully did his best to conceal his fate. There was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments had killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human
I'd be pissed too.
He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now.
I'm gonna go find you.
Michael had to correct for the sins of his father. He had to make things right. Michael would burn Fazbear Entertainment to the ground. I mean, what else could you do when your skin was permanently purple? Michael's strategy was simple. He would apply for night security guard positions at the old defunct pizzeria locations. That way, no one ever had to see him or smell him during his shift. And all these old, shuttered locations did need guards. Teenage vandals and squatters were always looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no one ever really...
That is support. Oh, I don't have the first one, but that is supported because in the first movie, even though it's built over by a mall, which is actually interesting because the same thing happens in Fnaf Security Breach, where they build a mall over the original pizzeria. Which is interesting that happens twice, but isn't it funny that it happens 2 separate times? But they basically break in through like I think it's either a secret door or they break through a wall or something. I forget exactly how they do it. I wouldn't know what page it would be on. Does he actually say what page it is?
Teenage vandals and squat.
No, he doesn't. Damn you, MathPat. I'm not rereading everything to figure out where it is.
Unless they were practically out of options. Enter Mike. One by one, he would take on the job of security guard, changing his name each time to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail. Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics and figure out how they worked, writing about his experiences in his security logbook. While there, he would listen to the old tapes where upper management awkwardly welcomed new recruits to their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory details of his father's franchise from the outsiders looking in, confused and afraid about what was happening in the walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the Golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls
It's
around
me.
him. Except
It's
now,
me.
there was something else there. It was no longer alone.
The vengeful
Another
spirit.
angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy
Casty,
would attack
correct?
him. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts. Each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire.
Yep.
Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still
And he would know that since he was at FNAF 6.
Revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares to begin again. Hallucinations that brought him back to his childhood.
Which assumingly is FNAF 4, right? I'm assuming that's where this is heading.
His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father.
Though I'm assuming if FNAF pizzerias start going up in flames, someone would be checking out and giving you background checks.
Little did Mike
I don't know.
That day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, a new horror attraction inspired by the awful crime
Hey, it's 2023. We're in the year of the frights.
that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza so many years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally, this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of tragedy. Mike applied for the job and was immediately...
And then security breach happened.
Security guards rarely received thorough security checks. They also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they...
Yep, definitely a costume. A rotting corpse.
Hey, glad you came back for another
He would
night.
definitely get hired.
Promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
For weeks, there was nothing. But just as Mike considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
You're not gonna believe this.
We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him? Sure enough, there he was.
I remember when FNAF 3 came out. I nearly pissed myself.
Decaying with age. And there they were, a small family of broken men finally reunited. It's been a long time, Dad. Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria to pizzeria, suddenly sprang to life. Their burned faces haunting him.
It's because Afton's there, right?
His father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they were harmless. more annoying than anything else. But there was one that felt different from the others. One that was more than just a mere phantom. The security puppet. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the hall.
Which is always interesting to me, because this is the only camera that the puppet appears in, right? But as you can see, there's one puppet, two puppet. There are two puppets in this picture. Both of them are probably real. It's just one of them and also I'm looking at the burnt one, and the burnt one looks burnt, but then the tears are still there. So how is the puppet, or the tears are, I can't tell if they're tears or if it's just a burn mark. Because both puppets have tears. Maybe that's where the soul's coming from? Maybe? I don't know.
You could even see its reflection in the water pooled
Also, there's an error because Chica would have a round thing in her eye.
underground. It would seem like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense
Only
that his brother
5?
was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desiccated walls erupted in flames.
Also, what building would have enough wiring to misfire and cause a fire? Was he in the kitchen? Because I don't think this pizzeria has a kitchen. I don't think you're serving food here. Because I don't think there might be. Hold on. Is Freddy... Shit. I'm gonna look on the wiki. Five Nights at Freddy's series. Locations, assuming. Why is there only one location? We caught up to Fnaf 3. Yeah, there's a lot. Well, we've caught up a lot more because not all of the games are in the same area. I'm trying to figure out if this was a pizzeria, because if it was, then I don't think it was a pizzeria though. Wasn't it just like an attraction? So I don't know what would cause wiring to misfire.
Somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father.
That isn't how
Luckily,
he
the solution
looked.
would present itself later that year. Not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
Also, wouldn't Henry be old as fuck by now? Like,
You're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee. Restaurant ownership.
guess this is Henry coming
something
back.
Almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face of the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand has been closed for years. William had been stuck in a suit and a wall. The only person who legally could bring the franchise back was Henry.
Is William.
He largely pulled out of the
Or
franchise
Henry,
about
whatever.
His father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best, applied for a franchise and immediately got the job. There was just one thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
If you are playing this tape,
Paragraph 4 was basically to check the back alleyway.
at the end of every shift,
Yeah.
as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed required him to keep special lookout for independently moving animatronics outside the restaurant. Now he knew something was up here. Henry was luring them all back. Rather than trying to go to them, like Mike had done for years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting them all under the same roof. He was finishing them off for good. Mike knew this wasn't meant to be a restaurant. It was meant to be a prison, a containment vessel, a locked box, meant to trap them all in so they could finally end the madness. It took a few nights, but eventually everyone was there. His father, the puppet, the robot spaghetti that had once violated his body, and his sister, now hopelessly devoted to serve the man that had once gotten her killed. It was time. He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he didn't move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be washed away, he needed to be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer.
Also, his son would be like 50 at this point, so...
Intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be, and to you monsters trapped in the corridors.
Best ending ever, by the way.
Give up your spirits.
This is our maker's moment.
You son of a bitch. Why would you put an ad right there?
Don't belong to you. For most of you, doors one.
I'm replaying this.
You are right where you want to be, and to you monsters trapped in the corridors. Be still. Your spirits, they don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened up to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting.
And with that, it was over. Afton Legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a little old box. As the flames danced around the office, Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. But William wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, something or someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself
Damn
locked
it, Cassidy.
from his past. The pizzeria, his son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did he get here? He called out into the silence. Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at him, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop! Make it stop! William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take it anymore, everything was quiet. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, and then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past, all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them. A group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release us, but I'm not gonna let that happen.
The one you should not have killed.
I will keep you here, no matter how.
I will hug you, and I will love you, and I will call you George.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where? the one he shouldn't have killed. William thought back. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that stood out. Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder, no. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were back, and now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective revenge.
This is also a Fazbear Fright story.
Taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. William's will was so strong, his soul so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-lock suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him. So a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important one as we shift perspectives to Mike and tell his side of the story. And with FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach having so much to explain, I didn't want to rush through things by trying to cram it all in here. Don't worry, I know you've all been patient. The final video is happening on March 25th. That is live.
Yep.
It is getting ready to go.
It's already out.
I want this thing to be over and done with as much as you. I am not just stretching it out for the views. But before we wrap up for the day, I did want to talk about the big Orville elephant in the room, Mike's quest for revenge. You might have noticed that I was vague about the dates, and there's a good reason for that. I don't know them. There is no good way for me to fit in. Here's what I do know. We know with a high amount of certainty that Michael Afton is the character that we play as up until Ultimate Custom Night. Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith, the security guards for FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 respectively, get fired for, quote, tampering with the animatronics and odor. Weird connection between the two of them, right? But now, look at the phantom animatronics that are haunting us in FNAF 2. Models from both FNAF 1 and FNAF 2. Meaning, whoever is sitting in that security guard chair, Fazbear Frights, they have to have seen both locations and their animatronics. And that's not all. Their design.
Something else interesting is the only FNAF 1 animatronics that they see is Chica.
Why is that so unusual, though? Fazbear Frights is the first time in the franchise that we hear
very
about
interesting.
anything burning down. From that point on in the story, it's like the characters turn pyro and are suddenly setting fires left and right. But for the first 3 games, nothing ever catches fire. The animatronics are just...
That is a very interesting point, and I feel like he has it right on the money.
And why would our security guards see them as being burned? Someone has to have been going location to location, setting these places on fire, purging the sins of the past. We know we're definitely playing as Mike and sister location in FNAF 6 based on the in-game dialogue. And in FNAF 4, there's an Easter egg where we can hear the phone call from Night 1 of FNAF 1, meaning that whoever's in that bedroom has heard the recording as a security guard. We also know that Mike has seen the nightmare animatronics based on his drawing.
Which means Mike is the person in the FNAF 4 room. So all of those nightmares, so the flatline is him remembering that his brother only lasted 5 days. And then after that, Nightmare, right? I think Nightmare?
So overall, there is solid evidence that connects all of FNAFs 1 through 6. You'll also notice how the character encyclopedia doesn't have a page for Mike.
Do I still have
has a page for Chocolate Bunny Bonnie, but not Michael? Some tells me they don't want us to confirm how many games he's been in, because that would confirm too much of the theory. In short, this gives us an incredibly compelling and complete narrative.
I'm Batman. The Flash.
Mike as our protagonist, and William, his father, as our antagonist. Mike accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the guilt of his past and is looking to make things right across the rest of the games. In sister location, he failing to finish the job in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF.
What? Did it skip something there?
Accidentally kills his brother in Fredbear's mouth, which begins our story and sets William down his pathway of destruction. Mike is then haunted by the in FNAF 3, he ultimately helps Henry end it all in FNAF 6. It is great. It is a clean narrative. There is just one problem: timing. Mike's quest can't really start until he's been down to sister location, seen baby, and gotten himself scooped. That's when he finds out about Afton's secret life. It's also when he's gonna start to smell, because, you know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And we know that he's not going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made, Freddy's has been closed, and Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post-1993, after William is...
This year watcher. I've been catching up on the Fnaf series, and I think the whole thing's cool. This is something you should probably breach off of, but I don't think everything that is presenting here is 100% correct. There are a few things that I would personally change, like for instance, I do like the way that he's editing this because it makes it more serialistic and it's more enjoyable to digest, but I feel like he should have been more, okay, so this is how I got this type thing, and I wish he would have, like, made a few things more clear with this, because, I'm insinuating that the FNAF 4 was Michael Afton. Not the crying child. The crying child is who he is dreaming as, and the crying child is the one. It's obviously the crying child that is doing the mini games, but I would insinuate that at least for the first 5 nights until the nightmares, or not the nightmares, the Fredbear, like the nightmare, comes out, which that could be crying child, 100%. But I think at least until that point, it would be, Michael. Why is my thing freezing all of a sudden?
Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics. As you're drinking, has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're all...
That is a good question. Why is my thing freezing? What time are we at? 2306. Restart it. It just wanted another advertisement. They're able to play these advertisements, no problem, but they can't play my video.
Know that he's not going down into the bunker until the Funtime animatronics have been made. Freddy's has been closed.
I'll just let it
out of the picture. That all.
I don't know why it's acting so weird right now. There's nothing else going. You've watched the whole timeline already? Yeah, I agree with some points, but I also disagree with some points.
And Afton is out of the picture. That all should be happening post-1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're all...
I don't know what's going on.
Perfectly. You know, he's a walking, talking, rotting corpse. And we know that he's not going down in 1993, after William is sealed behind a wall. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned if they're all...
I don't know. Maybe if Matthew could continue his
will do the trick. Strikes me as a raspberry lemon kind of guy. So once again, head on down. Lee loves it so much that he even bought special scent. My friends, this chapter comes to a close. In 87, then employee number 3 is hired. But that then presents us with a few problems. Afton has already dismantled the original animatronics as we see in the FNAF 3 minigames. How are those things getting burned?
God damn it.
But it's a bit weird to say that the first few nights are in 1987, and then employee number 3 is hired on years after the restaurant closes. Anyway, just wanted to call that out because I don't have a solid answer for it, and I'd love to see your comments down below.
Okay, so it doesn't have a solid answer for it. So what do you say? How would Mike be able to burn the original animatronics after Afton has already destroyed it, turned into Redmond, whatever? He probably went to the original pizzeria. That is actually a really good question that I don't think could be solved, because you can't both burn an animatronic. you can't both burn an animatronic and then disassemble it and then melt it again. But then in FNAF 3, you see that the souls aren't gone until FNAF 3. So maybe the souls, okay, so maybe, the souls transferred into different animatronics, but then that would also not make any sense. Because, how would he be able to go to FNAF 2? That is really interesting. Because FNAF 2 canonically takes place before FNAF 1, which would mean the broken down animatronics are the originals. Therefore, they've already been broken down. And then they're refurbished to launch again. I think that's a point that he's missing, is they're refurbished before going back out into the public. How the souls are, like, he could, because all Afton needed was the metal for the souls. The souls could still be bonded to the metal, but they can also be in the suits at the same time. That would also explain why in FNAF 2 the suits are all torn up, because Afton ripped the animatronics out the suits. So they probably have different endoskeletons. That would also explain why we see one or two endoskeletons from the puppet box, because that is an Easter egg. Dough. 1 half. Yeah, these guys. 2. See. Because during FNAF 2, I don't think that's... Is that real? That could be real. But then again, there's also this image suggesting that that isn't real. But in FNAF 2, we see this, which everyone assumed to be Golden Freddy's endo, but what if this is one of the original endos that were not melted down? That Afton, that actually would be good, because maybe Afton melted 5 of the animatronics and then came back for Golden Freddy's. He disassembled Golden Freddy, then when his final, like, we don't see the endoskeleton in the cutscene, but that would make a lot of sense why he would go back to remove the endoskeleton from Golden Freddy. Because everyone's theorized for the longest time that this is Golden Freddy. Golden Freddy's animatronic suit. So maybe after the animatronics are out, they go back to their original forms. Golden Freddy is both split between this, like, sitting down motion, headless. It's shown that he can switch between the suit and just a head. So what else is stopping him from being the endo as well? Have you watched the live stream talkback? I haven't watched all of it. I have watched some of it. It's really long. I don't know if we'll get to that. But that would make a lot of sense. And that would also be a good reason, because they could be attached to the suits still, but that doesn't mean that they still have their original endos. You know what I'm saying? Though I could be 100% wrong, and Scott, like, completely debunks it in the next game or whatever. If Scott's still working on the games, I don't know. But I think that that could be a good answer to why they would be burnt when Mike goes through, but be disassembled and melted down when Afton gets to them before Mike. That they were just kind of like, the suits were just kind of put on random, and that would also explain why these have 2 mouths. which always seemed weird to me. Why they would have two mouths? You see in this original one that there's a second mouth for Foxy, but then he's also torn up. I don't know. It's always seemed weird to me that they have their original mouths and then an endoskeleton inside that doesn't match up. And the endoskeleton are these like ones where it would actually be more like this. These would be the new endoskeletons. And then these would be the original ones, which are much wider than this one. As you can see, they have more and this is a fan render, but I believe this might be from the game, but I'm pretty sure this is just a fan render, because yeah. But
we'll see you
could be
March
wrong.
25th for the grand finale as we cover the final 3 games in the franchise.
But it's just a theory, a game theory.
Games we're trying to tell us. Until then, my Faz heads, remember, even though Afton kinda succeeded in being brought.
That's just a theory, a game theory. That's the end of the video. The rest of it's a sponsorship. Boom, we got another ad. Yay! On the final point, I'll put a poll. I'll put a poll in the chat.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, and the final part of my.
I'll take a break here for a minute. Take a break here for a minute, and ooh, we're doing pretty good this month, even though we barely live streamed. All right. It's reality, my mentality. Everything changes so rapidly, and I'm ready for the never-ending fire. Can't mute that because I already hear myself. We've had 17 views. Let's go. Okay. Engage with my audience. Poll. Back. Don't mind me, just misspelling fucking everything. I'll put a timer on this. I'll give you guys a few minutes. I'll give you guys 5 minutes. Or less, I don't know. How you guys doing, by the way? How you guys doing today? I do want this to come lower down. Because it's too high up. You're back? Okay. There's a poll. You need to answer the poll. So if I'm sitting right here, that's too low. Because you guys are barely seeing me. I change this all the time. Turn this over. Okay. 1 minute ago. I'll wait a little bit longer. I'll wait a little bit longer, and then I'll I edited my camera. I'm satisfied. If we never broke up, I'll never be sad. Everything we once had. You're gonna play some Fortnite. I might be I might not be able to join. I'm gonna be dead honest. Alright, alright. Cause if we're watching live talk back, there ain't no way. Because I'm gonna be here for hours.
We're bringing our story to a close by talking about the most complicated and controversial part of the timeline, the part that I've been dreading most of all, the end. The moment where we're finally forced to come to some definitive and difficult answers trying to explain what the heck we were watching in Security Breach. The last 2 episodes have been about death. The death of Afton's family, the deaths of multiple children, the death of the franchise itself as Mike and Henry figuratively and literally burn it all down. Today's episode, though, and the current end of this franchise is instead all about rebirth, the return of old characters in new forms, and the controversial rebirth of a franchise entering the next era of its
I bought this game. I have this game somewhere.
Due to scheduling conflicts, I won't be able to have any live talk back after this episode. I know, I promised one, I was really excited about it, but I just couldn't make it work with my schedule and all the other guests' schedules. That said, I still do plan on doing one over the coming weeks with special guests. Just make sure
this stream will go over this stream will be over 4 hours.
Community tab for the announcement as to when that's gonna happen. And now, without any further ado, we finally reach the end and a new beginning to our story.
Pose, purple guy. Pose, purple guy. Yeah. By the way,
I actually switched from Chrome to
game.
GX a while ago just because I was so
It's Charlie. It's Charlie.
resource hog that it is and
It's called a mag.
So let's.
Okay. Yeah, this is gonna go way past 4 hours. I knew this was gonna take long anyways.
There is no need for you to return.
There is no need for you to worry. It is no longer a corporate entity.
Paid, all assets redistributed. The company was outright dissolved. Even the memories of the horrors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness.
So does that mean it is all public domain? Technically? Maybe a little long. For Fnaf, I just wanted to react to this because this will all be edited down 4.5 hours long. Yes. Yes, it will. It's going to be long. It's going to be worth it because they're going to be going over everything, but I'm also giving my live reaction, so it's been, because we've only gone through like maybe an hour's worth of footage and it's already been 2 hours, so yeah, it's probably because I've just been reacting instead of, I don't know why this decides to just randomly turn on now. But, what was I gonna say? Yeah, no, this is definitely, and I'm also gonna edit this down into a video and, post my, reaction onto, my main channel. But, yeah.
The people William was dead, Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of them collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone.
Yep. Except...
Oh, except what?
Pay your child support, you deadbeat!
She would be 90 years old by the time this happens. If she was around the same age as William, she would be nearly 90. Or 80. I don't know how she would be still up and moving. She must have lived a really healthy life. If she is still walking around.
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were...
Clara Afton. Is that her canon name? Clara Afton. That is her canon name? Claire Afton, family, Purple Guy, also known as William Afton and Dave Miller from Fnaf books. She is mother of blah 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 blah. Where is this sourced? Where's this sourced from? I need. If any of you guys know where this is sourced from, I need to know, because I didn't know that her name was Clara.
Good if they'd had the perfect home, a thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work, obsessive.
I don't know.
She had watched him change from this irritatingly brilliant man that she had fallen in love with to a drunken monster struggling to hold himself together. And despite her trying to reach out to him in those desperate days, he was just too far gone.
Changes a person. Inside your walls, music in my halls. All I see is an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship. And from there, she largely...
That was from both Sister Location and Custom Night. I know my facts.
A mystery from William's past, a footnote in his history. And that was fine for her. She wanted to leave that part of her life behind. She tried to move forward, never wanting to hear the name Freddy Fazbear again. A time defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then, the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly her mail was flooded with notifications, requests, obligations. She had been there since the beginning, helping William in the early days of his business. And now, as a shareholder and sole living member of the Afton family, all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had long left behind. Looking at the blueprints, the contracts, the memos, she felt old wounds begin to reopen. The regrets of a happy family that had been torn away from her. William had always been brilliant. That's what had attracted her to him in the first place. But he'd also been too blinded by obsession and pride. He was too jealous, too petty, too unable to actually see a bigger picture. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was holding the power. This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head.
I'm too old for this shit. That is what resonates in her head. Because she's like 80 or 90 years old. But yeah, I guess this could work since Afton said this one time on the crying child's deathbed. Also, I shouldn't have paused it because it just broke the video. Where are we at right now? 350. Maybe if I try 4.
At William's work now laid out before her, she knew that to rebuild this family, to rebuild the pieces of that shattered life, to reclaim the kid.
YouTube's weird right now.
For her, she knew that he had been on robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions. That said, there had to be
steel wall.
She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family,
Scott.
she first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses, the technology patents, and the Fazbear name, she converted the corporation back to an LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family-owned.
Yeah.
The irony was fitting. From there, she would need Remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff here and there. But clearly, it wasn't enough. He had, what, like 4, maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics, all out there, all gathering remnant from unsuspecting customers. But to do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept everything in-house. His obsession with control limited him. Clara, though, she wasn't nearly that precious. A plan like this required partners, people outside of Fazbear to do the heavy lifting. So she contacted mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on over. She would
So this is where AR comes into play, and I feel like this is actually very accurate.
Make sure that they made skins for every occasion. Chocolate Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos.
Vintage Y2K.
Oh, ads, ads, ads. If only I could have ads on my videos and I'd be paid for it.
Any year, any condition.
We've watched like 20, 30 ads at this point. This is only on PC, by the way. PC and television. On my phone, I barely get any ads.
The Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Was it a sellout? No doubt. It was exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like, what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for
I like how I was using the Fnaf 2 Happy Day Kids.
greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had to offer, and all the while they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her. In a word, it was brilliant. There was just one problem with it. No one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's brand was still mud in the public eye. No one would want to hire animals.
I mean, after like 15, 20 dead kids.
Kills a party quite like the threat of death, you know. So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhoods. She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us.
Damn it. This wasn't happening earlier.
She needed to win back the public's affections, reactivate some nostalgia for the spooky stories of their childhoods. She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us.
That's interesting. I don't know why it's doing this. It wasn't doing it earlier.
Between shifts at the dollar.
An elaborate cover-up.
Struggling game developers were a dime.
Okay, so basically she said it's they're covering up the real stories.
Found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. The right mix of desperate and doofus, willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever.
I feel like the families that were originally attacked by Freddy Fazbear's would have probably sued.
She built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be big. It needed to be flashy. It needed to be a palace place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear products. So with a steady supply of remnant flowing in, it was finally time. The stage was set. It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family. March 2035. The first was obvious. The crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating artificial humans using animatronic technology. And so that's exactly what she would do. Rebuild her boy from the ground up using robotic parts. His shaggy brown hair, his favorite striped shirt, even down to small details that no one would notice, like the band-aid on his left knee. William's research had even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed and processed food, making them virtually indistinguishable from a typical human. He would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems. If something were to, say, interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or x-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical, normal human boy. She worked down in the bowels of the Pizzaplex, giving him life, but it was one thing to build him, it was another to help him remember his identity. He died so young, so early in their history, that there was no preserved memories for him, no documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days. The family recreated: 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties. All for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt a warmth that she hadn't in decades. This was the joy that she'd been working towards. This was what it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was working. She had to keep going. Next was William. If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that
Right underneath.
pizza place where Henry was
Right underneath
fact,
the
that's specifically why she insisted
Pizzaplex.
on building the Pizzaplex there over the same
My voice is dead.
Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was
Yep.
right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for.
Why is it... Okay, the one thing I had a problem with is... Why is it so completely different than both of the last generations of Springtrap suits?
Rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur line.
Also, wouldn't everything just be burnt by this point? There wouldn't even be anything yellow. It would just all be brown.
How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements were the top priority. They'd be pulled from their new line of glam rock animatronics. She'd have to see if they had any spare Bonnie parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was...
It's funny that remnant is
In his
purple.
current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo. It was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place.
We've seen
Unlike her darling boy Gregory,
head or bodiless animatronics fly before.
only a series of electrical connections after
Why do we now need to listen to continuity?
could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious. A planner, someone who had backup plans to his backup plans.
Well, he probably downloaded his brain into like some thumbtack or something.
It all starts with Snuggle.
Why can't I wear white after Labor Day?
Because
Enough,
I
there
mean,
it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone to test it.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been told us to scan it, said it would expedite the process so we wouldn't need...
okay, so because of all the glitching, I'm gonna just kind of elaborate here. And also, how would this... I'm assuming she would have had to go back to the Circus Babies rental, whatever, to find all of those. So she'd have to go back to her old house, not the pizzeria that took everybody. Because why would his partner keep a consciousness of himself, or his partner keep his murderous partner's consciousness? That makes zero sense. you would think that he would burn, or he wouldn't have all that. He'd just throw it away, chop it up, whatever, break it, or burn it. You know what I mean? So you'd have to get it at circus babies. That would make the most sense. But I'm assuming he just used that as like just a background. But I would assume that she would find it at circus babies rental, because that would also be where she would have to go to get the schematics for everything. Because circus babies was something that nobody knew about, not even their own family. And when she got the contracts, everything, because she's the last living survivor of both Emily and Afton, she would get all of the leases and buyout, like basically anything owned by both Afton or uh, Fazbear Co. would go to her. So she would know about the base, she would know about the house, she'd have her old house back, she would have the sister location back, she'd have all of the burnt properties, which is why she built over the old property. She would have all paperwork, documents, everything to do with Fazbear Entertainment at her fingertips. So you would assume that she would go to sister location instead of yeah, he's still alive. The reason why he's still alive is because Vengeful Spirit is keeping him alive in purgatory. So he's in between living and hell currently at the point that we're at. But when he would wake up, he would have no memory because his brain is melted. But I think that's BS. But anyways.
Program any pathfinding ourselves.
Unlike the other games that she'd paid to have made in the past, this one had a different purpose. This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running, spreading his virus to the masses.
You acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transference, real-world manifestations of digital characters.
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness would be able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial one, Jeremy, was so desperate from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder. Messy. Afton's followers
This would be taken in VR.
Second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone.
This is Vanessa, the reluctant follower.
Surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point.
No. She would be like 50 years old. 6 years old in 2025. Which I'm assuming is around the date that this would be going on, because you would have to have both Pizzeria Simulator burned down, build a ginormous restaurant or pizzaplex over it, then start running it, build animatronics for it, and have a VR game. So like he'd be in like 2025, 2026. Makes you even older. So I don't know how you're still alive at this point. Maybe you're hanging on because all your remnants still there, but at this point she would be in her 50s or 60s. Though I'm sure this is probably mentioned in the live stream that they go and talk back, because that seems like just like a thing that he like threw in there for a story aspect.
Because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection.
Also, why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she build two robot kids? Why wouldn't she just build all of her family as a robot? Because that would get rid of the hassle of trying to find another human to transfer your consciousness into. Like, I don't know. Like, once again, why wouldn't you just take the remnants of William and put him into a new body like you did Gregory? Except Gregory, he had to learn. William, you have his You have his digital consciousness and his body in one area. Why wouldn't you just transfer it into a new body? But mind that. Okay.
Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill? Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He manipulated.
I have to look back, but what was his name? Fnaf. I know. Sorry for pausing it so much, but characters. Five Nights at Freddy's series characters. William Afton. What would his name be in the books? Or would that be underneath the book category? Characters, William Afton, novel version. His name was Dave, right? Yeah, Dave Afton, or Dave, whatever. Yeah, so his name was Dave. Bill, okay.
After she lost the custody case.
I know your mom. After the case.
Silver Parasol Games, the VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all the correct boxes. Right age, blonde, green eyes, with a fondness for flowers and the outdoors. In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind. Underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated. Yes.
She's broken.
She would be the
Afton will put her back together.
Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital...
That doesn't settle with me.
Merged with Vanessa. Oh sure, she fought, fragmenting Afton's code into a series of tapes hidden across the game to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was a thrall that, despite occasional moments of lucidity, had to obey. And with Vanessa, it was a 2-for-1 deal. She was getting a daughter back, while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right way. The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being an Afton and a robot. So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping and the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be Chief Security Officer at the pizza place. A true family tradition to don the hat and badge, and all it took was a recommendation from the top as well as some emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter? Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed.
That does make sense, because that's his whole mission throughout Security Breach, is trying to protect Gregory. And I feel like if he killed... He's the one that proclaims to kill Gregory, then it would make sense for him to go back after he's dead and sees that, oh, hey, this is Gregory, or at least it looks like Gregory. I gotta protect him from the evil rabbit. Gotta protect him. So he protects Gregory during the entirety of Security Breach. But it would also make sense since his soul is down there still from the last game, because he burned with everyone. Which would also mean that Henry would be able to return. Henry burned during the fire as well, I believe. Henry would be able to return and potentially try and stop Afton again. But I'm pretty sure they don't want to repeat the same story and probably are going to go along with, like, Vanessa as the main killer after this game. We'll find out more during Ruin. I've been thinking about streaming Security Breach.
She could feel it. And just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William.
Just casually brainwashing, you know.
All together again under one roof. The Afghans united. A happy ending.
Just some casual brainwash, you know.
That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was just wrong. Behind crates, places that they had no earthly way of belonging.
This is
tears down their eyes, acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their
I'm gonna have to split the stream into 2 parts.
It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on. As long as her husband was around,
Puppet's back.
It too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but it was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she'd never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, why would she be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line that she refused to cross? After all, the Pizzaplex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits.
Yeah.
But it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the security puppet from generations ago. The very foundations of this place, the materials and wires that constituted it, were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. Maybe they were connected, she couldn't be sure.
The switch rate?
Living wires showcased in Rockstar Row. She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been
the
collecting.
switch rate?
From Afton's testing, she knew that both light and dark remnant existed. One of positive emotions and the other created from
remnant and agony.
Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history. A collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endos.
Yeah, this'll...
As long as it was left alone, it seemed to be harmless. But if any Afton outside of Michael got too close, it would lash out wildly. Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family.
Now, I'm not... I know I'm gonna get hate for this, but... Is this Henry? I mean... It probably isn't, because that would make no sense, but, I mean, knowing that his main goal in life was to build animatronics, then Afton came along and the Blob, that's what's called, after Afton came along and ruined everything, his main goal in life after that point was to destroy anything Afton related. He still wanted to have kids be happy. He wanted to save the kids, but he couldn't. So, in his afterlife, would he be able to rest knowing that William Afton is still alive? Or would the agony of his dead body take over and cause the Blob to lash out at the Aftons again? Bring back certain spirits that want to stop Afton, that need to stop Afton, that have to stop Afton. That would probably be what I would think. But then again, this could just be all of the agony from every animatronic Like, all the spirits are gone. Or at least most of them. The ones that aren't in play right now. Almost every original spirit is gone, but all of their agony lives on in the blob. That's what I would think.
That had been complicit in its horrible creation.
We're getting to 3 hours here.
That bringing the family together would have some unforeseen consequences. Gregory was normally the goodest of boys. She had literally built him that way. But lately, he'd been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders, requests.
Becoming a teen.
He loved playing on the arcade machines once the Pizzaplex closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with board on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with
what? God damn it.
Freddy responded to seeing this almost as though the core programming of Freddy responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to make sure that Vanessa was on the lookout for him. But she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel. To rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. Bit by bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built. Freeing Vanessa from
why would she...
destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose, as her carefully created world crumbled around her one more time, she began to plot her revenge. She would have to bring them all to ruin. And there you have it, my friends. Nearly a decade in the making, my Fnaf...
Get it? Because the next thing is ruin in the thingy thing.
By the way. As always, it wouldn't be right for me to finish without going over some of the more controversial takes that I just handed out. I think we can all agree that this part of the timeline was always going to be the hardest.
You have another 10 minutes of just them explaining.
First of all, the biggest swing of this episode, and obviously the one that everything else rests upon, Mrs. Afton being the CEO of Fazbear
It makes sense.
LLC. Here's why I went with this route. Now, first and foremost, the head of Fazbear Entertainment is the
Though she'd be ancient by now, it does make sense. But when has that ever stopped any of the characters from living?
And in the security breach memos, we get multiple mentions of
like Afton is,
things from the top down. Whoever this is,
if he was born near the 30s, he would be almost 100 by the time
they're the puppet master who's hiring the indie dev.
he comes back to life.
Building the Pizzaplex over the burial ground. So everything at the end of the timeline relies on this one singular answer. Now, as I see it, there are two possibilities here. One, an adult robot...
Which I don't think an adult... Well, that could be where they're going with this, because Baby is alive. Could be alive. And we did see Charlie become a person.
Versions of robot kids in the fourth closet, or Mrs. Afton. Could it be someone completely new to the franchise? Absolutely yes. In a game with so many returning faces and repeating themes, it would be pretty random and arbitrary. So, between these two girl bosses, who then would it be? Well, Elizabeth always wants to please her daddy, so she'd be most likely wanting to bring him to life. But then, what's Vanessa's role in all of this? Vanessa is...
She's just a random security card that brought her father back.
Backstories, but if the main goal is getting the Afton family back together, which seems to clearly be the case in security breach...
I mean, it would make sense as a narrative standpoint that, like, she wouldn't be a robot, but then again, I mean, Mrs. Afton, once again, would be ancient by this point, in her 80s or 90s. So why would she be wanting to rebuild her family that she was attached to in her 30s, even though they died as a tragic death? Also, why would she want to rebuild Afton? Especially since three of her children, her only, at least to this point, to our knowledge, three of her only children were killed by Afton, or the product of Afton's work. So why would she want to recreate Afton? It makes no sense. So I would assume that it would be Elizabeth. because she doesn't know that Afton was the one that was responsible for her death. Or if she did know, she would at least have some form of reason to bring him back, for him to fix her, for him to put her back together, like he promised her younger son, or her younger brother. So it would make sense that it would be Emily, and the only reason why Vanessa's there is either because Vanessa has the spirit of William and she needs to extract it from her, or maybe she's another child of the wife of Afton. Maybe. This is just a theory of mine, but she could just be another child of Afton, Miss Afton. She just doesn't have the last name of it. It also makes sense because her mom is mysteriously just not there, and her dad was also very similar to William in the sense of alcoholism and stuff like that. And her mom not being around, it makes sense on multiple levels. But I would say that it is probably Miss Afton running the company at this point. I don't want to stem off of his theory, so let's just continue here, but...
Which feels narratively repetitive and, quite frankly, kind of dumb. Now look at Mrs. Afton. We know next to nothing about her outside of any clues that we can get from Immortal and...
If you're calling multiple robot children repeatedly beating a dead horse on robot children, look at every book. In every book, there's a dead kid that comes back in a robot. Why is it far-fetched now, this late in the series, that we have two robot humanoids? Why is that so far-fetched? That would be something that, I would say. Repeating that. Anyways.
But what her being head of Fazbear does is make every other piece of the lore fit. Suddenly, you can have one of every other type of character. One robot kid in Gregory, one brainwashed human in Elizabeth/Vanessa, one OG and one possessed animatronic in Mud. Narratively, it makes everything else cleaner. Legally, it's also the option that makes the most sense. As I call out my narrative, she'd likely have some stake in the original company and all of its assets. So as Fazbear folds as a company, I'd suspect a lot of it would return back to her. But there was one clue that really sold me on this particular direction, and that was this right here, in the Post-it room. The big lore central of Security Breach, a dinner table scene with the whole family, including the mother. And not only is she there, she is at the head of that table, the position of highest honor and responsibility. She is the one in charge, with William being relegated off to the side. That one scene shows that we have to include Mom in there somewhere, and the only place it makes sense for her to be is at the top. Now, there is one big dilemma with my interpretation of all this. The Ultimate Guide really seems to point out that the head of Fazbear doesn't want the glitch trap virus to spread. They call out one particular email in Fnaf AR where the legal team calls a cease and desist to all action about scanning the circuit boards. And even in Fnaf VR, we're told that the circuit boards get stolen back by the client, presumably once they realize what danger is on there, trying to stop glitch trap before he spreads and gets out of hand. Here's the problem with that, though. If the head of Fazbear doesn't want Afton to rise again, why'd they restart the company in the first place? Why'd they build over the Fnaf 6 pizzeria? Why'd they go through an elaborate cover-up to make the possessed Vanessa an important part of the company? Just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It would be the most inconsistent series of actions ever, but I did want to call attention to it since it seems to be the route that the official guide is trying to steer us towards. Moving on to minor point number 1, the Five Nights at Freddy's games were made by the Rogue indie developer. Here's the thing, Fnaf VR opens with this line.
That's why we have recreated many of these completely fictitious scenarios, lies that you've been fed over the last several years, into a hilarious VR game.
It's recreating the lies told to you by the indie developer. And since Help Wanted has direct recreations of FNAFs 1 through 3, it means the games must be part of the fabrications that this developer made up. Also, all of this is heavily implied in the story of the same name, Help Wanted and Tales of the Pizzaplex, hence FNAF 1 through 3, canon games within the lore of the series. Big swing number 2, the elephant, or ghost in the room, Charlie infecting the Pizzaplex. John from the channel FNAF has made some great findings about Charlie's influence over over the Pizzaplex. The cables that looked like the striped arms of the puppet, the Nightmare-owned plushies that you find hidden across the Pizzaplex in weird places, the staff bots with creepy smiles and in your dreams written on the front. All of these things scream puppets. Plus, with the puppet mask not having tears in the blob, seems to imply
Yeah.
that Charlie's spirit exists elsewhere. She is still...
This would also be the second time that the puppet has been burnt. You know, that narratively doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but once again, we're too far into the series to question it off, so...
in play, and she has an important role, especially in Gregory's post-it room. The doors to the post-it room in the game's code are called Charlie doors, and inside we see a bunch of lit-up nightmare staff bot heads. Suspicious, to say the least. The channel ID Fantasy did a great theory looking at the post-it notes, concluding that the crying child / Gregory isn't alone in this room, but rather might be communicating with someone. A spirit, Charlie. Charlie's spirit seems to have pulled a poltergeist. Instead of controlling one thing, she's affecting a lot of little details, foundational elements of the Pizzaplex. And this isn't the first time that we've seen this in the franchise either. We've seen spirits communicating with people through physical writing in the survival logbook. So we know that this is an established means of spirit communication within this franchise. And I suspect that to some extent it might be Charlie's influence making Gregory go haywire. Which brings me then to my final and probably biggest controversy in recent FNAF history, Gregory as Patient 46, the evil robot mastermind. Now, I know when I first came out with this theory a year ago, people were mad. But here's the thing, you don't have to take my evidence points for it anymore. The recent Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY, basically goes and just outright proves it. In GGY, we find out about a boy named Gregory who's getting all the high scores.
I haven't read this, so I can't say anything on it.
Pizzaplex arcade machines. When therapists start to go missing, it's confirmed that GGY is the one that's working to bump them off. And when animatronics start getting corrupted by a mysterious glitch, GGY's letters are...
Everyday proof your car with Armor All stain repelling technology. Less work, more clean.
New DiGiorno fully stuffed crust pizza with an extra layer of cheese. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Found inside the code. He even chooses the code name Dr. Rabbit, for crying out loud. But obviously by the time of security breach, Gregory is working against Burn Trap, Vanessa, and the animatronics. Why? How? Well, it's not really clear. I tend to believe that something must have happened to cause him to either lose his memory or be reset in some way. Maybe it was Charlie talking to him in his post-it room. Maybe he hit his head. Maybe it was the connection that he made with Mike on stage in Glamrock Freddy. Not exactly sure, and I don't think we have enough clues to solve any of it yet. But it makes sense from a story perspective why he'd start off evil on Afton's side and then switch to trying to destroy him and not knowing who he is in security breach. And with that, my friends, I'm wrapping this thing up. Congratulations, we are on page 40. 22,000 words of FNAF, baby. Practically just wrote myself a Tales of the Pizzaplex short story. Have I answered everything? No. Does everything fit cleanly? No. But does it feel like the best and most cohesive narrative for all these characters that addresses most of the evidence we're given? Yeah. For me, honestly, it really does. And let's be honest with ourselves, the DLC will probably come out later this year and prove me completely wrong. Wouldn't be
Yeah,
next time. Then comes
probably.
the movie, whatever. My descent into madness continues. But regardless, I am so proud of this. This was a massive undertaking. And I'm so proud of our editors who have just destroyed the editing across all...
Yeah, this was a really good, really well edited video. Okay, they give their thoughts and topics at the end during the talkback, and I like Raito's take on running the show during this part of the timeline. I will probably get to that tomorrow or later tonight. I'm taking a break because the stream has officially hit 3 hours, around the 3 hour mark.
On 20+ minute uploads, you are unreal and your talent.
Though this was an insanely well timeline. I will give it out to MatPat for having the courage to throw this out and probably be wrong about a lot of it, you know? Because it wouldn't be the first time that Scott has changed narratively, because he's done it with Dream Theory. Then he also changed the ending of Afton to be after. Like, now Afton's back for no apparent reason. It makes no sense, but I'll get to this tomorrow. or later tonight. I'm probably not going to watch it right now because I do see that it's another 2 hours and 30 minutes, and I have not eaten today, so yeah. Let's see. Yeah, you have been sitting here for like 3 hours. That's how long we've been streaming. Thank you all for 267. 269 would be nice. Yeah, basically 3 hours. We're a little bit shy, but yeah. That has been the FNAF timeline so far. I agree with a lot of it, but like I said, there are a few things that I would, and I'll have to write them down because I'd like to see if they will talk about it during the live stream tomorrow. Because it seems so weird that um that Elizabeth would be a young adult. And also that Mrs. Afton would still be alive, kicking currently at the age of 80 or something like that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I will probably go for a bit, go eat, maybe play a few games, and then maybe hop back on later. But yeah, once again, thank you guys. I'll see you guys next one. Bye everyone.